Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a February 27th edition of Morning Coffee Review. Things are looking a little different today because we got a guest host. As always, we're here to talk about all things Bluebeam. So I'm Jason Artley, normally joined here with Michael Chave, but he's on vacation, so we brought in David Cutler. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things, but first, do a little housekeeping. Just a reminder that Bluebeam is going to be doing some maintenance on studio this weekend. So from Friday night through Sunday, you're not going to be able to get to studio. So that's March 2nd through the 3rd. Also, there's still that level up promotion. If you haven't traded in or converted to subscription, you got about 2 weeks to do so and save a little bit of money. So pretty quick and easy. Other than that, there was a pretty cool AI-focused webinar that Bluebeam did last Thursday. I know Liz was there and a couple other folks. They teased some of the new functions that will be coming out in April. So good stuff all around. I'm excited to be able to demo that and talk about it and see how that's going to affect everybody's workflows. But today we got a different workflow to talk about. So David, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll talk about what we're going to talk about.
Good morning. So my name is David Cutler. I'm a estimator and project manager with Benchmark Site Development, which is a mid-size site contractor here in the Philadelphia area. I am a civil engineer by training, licensed professional engineer, graduate of Clarkson University, along with at least one other person in the audience there today, and been building things in the construction industry for going on 30 years now. Done a little bit of everything from heavy highway, underground construction, subway tunnels in Washington, D.C., a bridge out over at the Great Egg Harbor in Ocean City, New Jersey, fiber optics, a little bit of everything, utility work, and currently I'm an estimator working with residential and commercial site development work here in the eastern Pennsylvania, southern Jersey, northern Delaware market.
Very cool. And today we're going to talk about sort of being a digital steward, right? Even though paper has died out, there's still paper around, right? There's still flat files everywhere. There's still CAD standards and drafting standards that went into those things. But how do we deal with that when we have PDF files? Now we've got PDFs everywhere. We've got some that are 20 years old that we're going to pull up today. We're going to talk about the best practices for PDF files and to make sure that they are usable in review, as well as making sure that they are, something that's going to be accessible and hopefully usable in 20, 25 years, assuming the robot AI overlords don't overtake us all. So this idea actually came from you, David. Where did the inspiration for this one come from?
Well, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about getting to know review as a takeoff tool over the last 4 years now is how flexible it is and how efficient it is, and all the data that I can pull out of review very easily, except when the PDF just isn't up to snuff. I have a neat opportunity in that I look at somewhere between 15 and 25 projects a year, and the quality of the PDFs that we see run the full gamut. One day I could be working with a project that's a scanned PDF. That's basically the equivalent of a crayon sketch in my book. And the next day I get a file and it's got layers and bookmarks. The scale is set. It goes the complete gamut. And one of the things I find frustrating is that I have to go in and make changes to PDFs that other people are going to have to do. So that's why I'd love to see the design side of things up their game. Maybe establish some PDF standards, like you said earlier about drawing standards and such.
Yeah, exactly. And our purpose today is to talk about just the PDF, right? We're sort of being agnostic as to the platform. Obviously, we're going to end up in Bluebeam Review, but what if somebody wasn't using Bluebeam Review, like some sort of Neanderthal, right? What if they're using an inferior product like all the other ones? And yeah, so we will dive in there. We're going to open up some CAD drawings. We're going to open up some old PDFs. We're going to go through a whole bunch of things today. So go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, and Dave Clark mentioned it there, that A program. In all honesty, I don't know how it works with all those things because I don't touch it. I've moved on and I've drank the coffee, and I'm just thrilled with what I can do with review. And I'm frustrated when the quality of the PDFs doesn't allow me to use the tools.
Exactly. We've all hopefully, maybe not hopefully, received a PDF from somewhere that is slow to open. It looks funky. They've got a whole bunch of issues. We're going to dive through some of those workflows today. So did you want to
Sounds
start
good.
sharing your screen first? I know you had a couple things to show, and I got a couple things to show. But
Why don't we start with yours? Because I didn't pre-load anything here, so.
I didn't either, because it's Tuesday morning, and I'm still 3/4 of a cup of coffee away from being awake. So I'm going to open up Review 21, and I'm going to share my screen just to show an example, just to get this out of there. I'm going to show a raster sample and a vector sample, right? So when we're talking about PDFs, we're always going to be talking about raster or versus vector, right? So this is a vector one. This came from a CAD program or Word. It was generated from a computer. So this is what we're talking about. Agnostic, as long as it came from a computer, there was no scanner involved. As I zoom in, the lines are crisp. They get a little funky as I zoom in and out, but otherwise I can still measure, I can select things, I can be a little bit more accurate. The line work and the text looks really good. Now in a raster sample, this is what we see a lot of still, where we've got those full-size pages that were printed out on paper and then we run them through the scanner. So it's the same file, but this is what's going to happen, right? You zoom in, the letter is just going to get more pixelated and gross because you can only do so much. Even if you scan it at the highest setting, you're still going to have sort of these digital remnants. Now, a lot of folks have moved on from these, but David, in our conversation yesterday, you said you're still working with rasters quite a bit.
Yeah, there's some of the designers that seem to, I guess they don't trust us. Either that, or it's just the way that they do their files. They will take and scan some or plot something, and then scan it. And the challenge with that is, there's nothing there. There's no content for us to work with, and that can be very frustrating.
Absolutely. And Ray put in the chat, flashback to AutoCAD raster design. And it gives you the heebie-jeebies, if anybody's played with that. Yeah, so you can still do stuff with these raster files, but let's talk
Absolutely.
about how we got here, right? So this is assuming that you came from paper. So what does that mean? You printed it, you probably signed it or had an engineer signed it, architect signed it, and then they scan it, right? That way they lock it, as David said. They're trying to protect that information versus a PDF, right? Because in a PDF, I mean, we can sort of go and wreak havoc however we like with these tools. If I wanted to go in and remove something, I have that capability to take that out, or make a change to it. This one wasn't signed. We'll talk about that too. If it was signed, sometimes you can't do that, and sometimes you can, depending on your settings. Michael and I had an episode, a month ago or so, on digital signatures versus digital certification. So go check that one out to see what changes were allowed and not allowed. But overall, and this is probably a question for everybody in the chat, how often do you still deal with paper and scanned raster PDFs? Yeah, Doug, what is this, 2010? You'd be surprised.
Yeah, and I understand people's concerns about proprietary information and people changing things and such. I understand it. At the same time, you're putting all of this effort into producing a digital document, and you're taking it and you're basically making a photocopy of it on a really bad machine. And you take all that functionality out of it, makes it, not useless, but you take something that is a beautiful work of art with your line work and such, and you're making it just a smear on a piece of electronic paper.
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, even old blueprints look better, you know? Um,
Exactly.
so yesterday when I was starting to dig through some files looking for an example to show, I found this one. And I don't remember where I got this. I'm guessing it came from an old client file, so I erased the title block. But this is an old vector PDF. And what I thought was interesting about it was it's not half bad. I mean, obviously, that font is a sin, so we know it came from AutoCAD. But also, it came from 2004. So this file just had its 20th birthday, and it's still usable, right? So this is where this conversation came from. How are we going to make sure that the files that we're producing today are still worthwhile 20 years from now, right? Because there are as-builts, there are things we're going to have to go find. We are going to have a bigger digital repository of stuff on all these projects, right? We're not limited by file cabinet size or flat file size. We can store everything anywhere, right? So how do we make sure those files are worthwhile? And what I thought was interesting about this particular one, again, for being a 20-year-old PDF, is that it has drawing layers in it, right? These came over from AutoCAD, not a very good CAD standard, in my opinion. There's a sports layer, but it has layers all the same, right? So we're going to go through, I'm going to pull up AutoCAD or Civil 3D, and we're going to print to show you how to get those layers embedded in the PDF. But David, you were talking about stuff that you do with layers and stuff that you appreciate with layers as an estimator.
Yeah, and I did open up one here, and this is one of the raster images. So if you happen to recognize the name of the contractor or the designer, I know at least there's one person that indicated that they're local here. Let me see if I can share this up here. Um, this one has no layers, and I have to apologize here. I mean, I do have my layers on here where I've created some tools or using my tools. Um, but I can't turn anything off here. If I wanted to use a fill, a dynamic fill in here, well, for one thing, it won't see the lines anyway. But a neat trick with dynamic fill is if you have layers, you can actually turn off the hashing. You can turn off the line striping. You can turn off the contours and do a dynamic fill through the parking lot just along the curb line. If you don't have the layers, you can't do that.
Right. So it makes it really easy for people downstream to turn on and off layers. However, the argument against that is that you can turn off layers and reprint it, right? You can turn off layers, and what you're getting is not necessarily the signed or certified version of what was released, but an estimator. Yeah.
At the same time, Jason, our customers that we have to sign a release for it will allow us to have the Autodesk files or the CAD files, and we can go in and do all that same stuff. Now we do have to sign a release that says they're not liable if we don't share, if we don't see all the information. Why couldn't we do something similar with the PDFs?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, we still have the obligation to produce the right product.
Right. Now, yesterday I was helping one of our sales reps. We're an Autodesk Platinum partner, but we come up against Bentley all the time, right? In a civil DOT fashion, because some states require MicroStation, Bentley, Open Roads, whatever, versus Civil 3D. And this came up with Pennsylvania, actually, because PennDOT, I think that's what they call it, PennDOT.
Yep.
They, on their website, they said they have I forgot the terminology. It was actually pretty cool. By 2025, all civil drawings are going to be going off of the model, not necessarily the PDF or the sheets anymore. Right. So the modeling aspect, the BIM, especially if you want to call it BIM for civil, is still lagging behind across the industry. But we're a year away from PennDOT requiring a model that you're going to be able to pull off of, right? Which is wild, absolutely wild.
Well, and that's the other part of it is, I've gotten into some discussions with some folks, I think it was on LinkedIn, or possibly over on U chapter 2 about going completely paperless.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if these designers are willing to go paperless and provide a model, why can't we have that functionality in the PDF files? And I think a lot of it comes down to the clients need to start demanding it, or I shouldn't say demanding, requesting it and writing it into their design agreements that this is a deliverable. And I actually I talked with a client last week, and I brought another one up here that I'll show. I went from the previous project I was working on onto this one, and this project actually has layers assigned to it. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll come in here. I actually get a little frustrated with layer naming conventions, but what I'll do is I'll come in here and I can edit them, or I'll edit my contours, and so that I can take obviously I'm not very good about my layers because I don't have everything on my own layers. But if I wanted to take and just isolate the driveway here, this client has a product that their designer has provided that is so much more useful to me, because I can just take and pour right through that and use that dynamic fill to get the area of that driveway. And without having those layers established, it takes that much more effort. And it's not just review either. We use a software through a sub-consultant by the name of AgTech for doing dirt work and dirt work calculations. And when I showed him this first set here that we were looking at, it took him hours to go through and basically digitize the existing contours and then digitize the proposed contours, because it's a flat drawing. There's no detail there. So anyway, I put myself into the light beam there again. Sorry about that.
No, but the model-based thing. So we're talking in the chat about, if you have that model, how do you review it? And 3D PDFs are pretty good, but you can't measure from them, and I want to be able to measure. Autodesk Construction Cloud does really well at viewing those models, and I think that we're going to see more resources that are going to allow that functionality as we go as well. But overall, this model stuff is big. So like Wisconsin DOT, Pennsylvania DOT, California, Florida, it's going to be more of a civil thing that we're going to have to deal with, because obviously civil is always a few years behind architectural when it comes to modeling and technology.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. And Tina asked an interesting question here about layers, and I'm not a Revit guy. I can work myself around in TrueView. Somebody mentioned that here a moment ago. I'm not skilled in it by any means. And the same thing with AutoCAD. I can't speak to what it takes to produce a PDF the way I'd like to have it. I just know it can be done. So I got to find the right people. But I wasn't familiar with that, with what Tina mentioned here about Revit does not do layers. Maybe that's something I've learned here today. So thank you, Tina.
Yeah, I don't. I think Ray, I might have to tag you in here, buddy. I'm not a Revit user either, but AutoCAD can do layers beautifully. And I'm going to pull up a drawing. I'm trying to find a demo data set here, and I'll show you that workflow.
And somebody mentioned Trimble Business Center in here too. I have had a demo license of that. It's very expensive, and a lot of this other software is also. Whereas, we've all made our comments about the software as a service and things along those lines. But for the price point, if you have a high quality PDF to work from, review is tough to beat for a lot of this the takeoff work that I do. And as we're seeing it go further out into the field, the quality of those PDFs are going to be even more important as we try to move to paperless. Teaching our field managers how to get a dimension off something, which I know you're not supposed to scale anything, but
Mm-hmm.
we scale things. That's why there's a scale on the drawings. So hopefully too many of the designers aren't having heart attacks over my statement there. But
Yeah, I'm gonna break all sorts of rules here, so we'll be fine. All right, so it's been a hot minute since I've been in Civil 3D, so I'm going to sort of sidetrack. I'm trying to do a quick little demo from Earthwork Processor since we were talking about this. You know, processing earthwork. David's doing it from a PDF that's getting digitized, or using AgTech. I'm going to use a add-on here for Civil 3D and just create a couple quick ones, just so I can have an exhibit that I'm going to print, right? So I can do this in my sleep, so I'm just going to do this pretty quick. And we're just going to leave. I'm going to leave everything basically default, just to get some data in here.
well, while you're working through that, Jason, the other thing, as far as I'm concerned, or the way I look at it, a lot of these things, if they're done, if the standard is set and there's a expectation, it's a huge time savings for downstream folks. You know, if the PDF that you receive has been scaled, you don't have to go back and scale it again. If it has layers, you don't have to establish those layers again. And you know, you have one designer that puts an extra hour into things, or just builds the habits that they already have them so that it just becomes their standard, and then everybody downstream reaps the benefit of it. You know, I'm not a lean expert by any means, but I'm sure that folks would highlight that as a way to make downstream use more efficient by one person doing it and removing that repetitiveness. You know, right now, if I get a drawing and I send it out to Vince to look at a certain portion of it, um, and he has to go through and set all the scales or set all the spaces and things like that. And then I'm doing it. Now both of us have done it. And all that does is make everybody's costs go up. But you know, if Doug had sent us that document and it already had the scale set and the layers and you know everything usable, we don't have to repeat that effort.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So let's talk about the scale and the layers and bookmarks. So here I'm in Civil 3D, aka AutoCAD, right? AutoCAD is the same. Civil 3D is built on top of it. But when you're printing from Civil 3D or AutoCAD, there are a number of different printers that come with it. Obviously, if you've got Review installed, you have a Bluebeam PDF driver, which works really, really well. But this one cannot do layers. It's frustrating, right? Because our goal in this exercise is to get layers from AutoCAD and put them inside of Bluebeam. Instead, we're going to use DWG to PDF. This comes with Civil 3D, comes with AutoCAD. It's been the default for 20 plus years. It works pretty well. Now, when you do this one, you're going to have this option for PDF options, right? Let me go back to Bluebeam PDF. That button disappears, right? So if I go here to DWG to PDF, I have a PDF options button where I can go in here and include layer information, include book hyperlinks and bookmarks. So it's already built in, and it's going to capture the fonts used in the drawing. Now, on that note, just to get on a little bit of a rant, I know we talked about Simplex, the AutoCAD font. If your CAD standards are set up to use Windows TrueType fonts, the better off you're going to be in Review, right? Because you can actually edit the text and read the text and all that other stuff. So this is going to capture the fonts, but hopefully they're just Windows ones, right? So now I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to give some people the heebie-jeebies for doing this. We're just going to call that 20 scale. And oops, not that one. And we'll center that. Whoa, that looks bad. That's really weird. That shouldn't happen with those hatches. Okay. I've never tried printing this file, obviously. There we go. So let's just roll with that. It's 20 scale. It should have layer information. It's going to make a PDF. And desktop. Do.
Yeah, Jason, Josh has got a good point here about accuracy in what you're designing
Mm-hmm.
and what you're creating. Yeah, I started off in AutoCAD back in 1988, 89 in high school, back when you actually had to have the 5 1/4 floppy disk to put in the machine to boot it up and everything. And I didn't know anything about scale, and I knew a little bit more than or maybe about as much as the teacher did that was trying to teach us. So I was just drawing lines and trying to draw a subdivision and things like that, and drawing a catch basin. And I thought I was really cool, but it was just it should have been a crayon sketch. And no, Doug, I'm not quite that old that we dealt with punch cards. I do know what they are though. But it really comes down to what you're trying to do and putting some pride in your work. And again, I am not a designer. You give me a blank sheet of paper, it's probably not going to be pretty. But at the same time, when I get a piece of work and I can see that someone has put the time into making the lines connect, and setting the scales, and those kinds of things, that's that pride of ownership in your product, that I don't know if just people are rushed or they don't feel it's necessary. We need to get the word out there that it really does make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's not something new, right? CAD centers have been out since 82 when AutoCAD came out. So it's just been one of those things that is hard to adjust to it. And I thought it was funny. If anybody's heard of Augie, so Autodesk User Group International, it was a magazine, or it still is a magazine, but it's been out for a number of years. Augie has since stopped using Autodesk as much. So now there is Bluebeam content, there is BricsCAD content, there are other contents in there. But in the latest issue, and I'll put it up on our LinkedIn chat, there is an article about how saving or spending an hour now is going to save hundreds of hours down the road, right? And it's the same thing that David and I were talking about yesterday. If we spend an extra half hour on our project, think about all the time it's going to save all the way down the line, right? I thought that was a timely thing for Augie to pop up. All right.
Well, and I think a lot of it comes down to, just like we say with review, asking, how do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
How do I do this consistently where I get the product? And what are those best practices that you put into place? Whether it's Liz with how she's doing her collaboration and her custom statuses and things along those lines, or again, Vince with his 50 shades of black to establish his tracking systems. There's amazing resources there. We most of us just scratch the surface on what the software can do. But it's tough when you get kneecapped by the quality of the document that you received to start with.
Mm-hmm. It certainly makes a difference. Let me get caught up on the chat here. So what I didn't talk my way through it, but notice when I brought this PDF in, it wasn't automatically set to scale, right? It wasn't at that 20 scale that I had printed from. Even if this drawing was set to that, it's not going to come over. I mean, this was already set to 30. It should have, if that were a setting that would migrate to PDF, it would have come in at 30 scale. It didn't. But since I know I printed it at 20, I went and set it at 20 in review. Now that's a step that I can take. Again, who's going to save somebody a ton of time, because this particular exhibit doesn't have a scale bar on it. It doesn't have anything that you can pull off of, no known measurement to calibrate to. But since I know it's 20 scale, I can go and save that time for somebody down the line. It is a pretty ugly exhibit, but it is what it is. All right. What else did we want to talk about, my friend?
Well, the other one that I had was, or another one I had was flattening the PDF selectively, at
Hmm.
least before you send it out. I know a lot of us have talked about this again over at U Chapter 2. You get a decent file, and a lot of the notes and such on the drawings are all there as markups, as opposed to being part of the document. And so it's another step. You have to go through and flatten all of those Autodesk comment type markups, because they can really throw somebody off as you're trying to select something, and then all of a sudden you're clicking on something that's, a note or something along those lines. Um, so that's one of the ones that I like to see, is when those have already been taken care of. Jason, you seem to be muted right at the moment.
Because I sneezed and I forgot to unmute myself. Um,
Thank you.
yeah. Uh, there's that artistic license, right? I have a blank sheet of I have a blank sheet of paper. I have a blank screen of CAD. I can do whatever I want. However, if I'm doing what I like, doesn't mean it's what you like. It doesn't mean it's what anybody else likes. That's why there is in the U.S. a national CAD standard that we're talking about. Getting everybody to comply with it is impossible, right? And this is part of that. This 4-digit or 4-character dash 4-character blah blah blah. That's a national CAD standard. I do have the actual national CAD standard on this computer somewhere. It's 900 pages long, right? And so, who's really going to go look through that to find everything that they need? It's ridiculous. So, getting everybody to comply is just something that most folks don't have the time for. So they need to build it into the template, which is a whole other story. If you're not using a template in Revit or Civil 3D or AutoCAD or whatever design program you're using, you're wasting your time. Especially if you're using the template that came with Civil 3D, it's not good. But I still see firms using that around the board. They added a couple layers to it and they call it good.
Well, and I think one part of it is, and David Clark mentioned it, that the U.S. has national CAD standards. I had no idea about that. And part of it is education and making sure people know that that information is even out there as a standard. And part of that might be, just like Vince mentioned here, educating our customers that are buying those services, that they should be asking for it. Your Tesla is great that it has auto drive and everything, but if you don't know how to use it, it's just a feature that's there that nobody knows about, which may or may not be a good thing. But a lot of it comes down to knowing what you need to be asking for. And we actually talked about that. I think it was Adam Bauer had posted a question asking about how to unlock a AutoCAD or a PDF file. And one of my suggestions to him was ask them to send you an unlocked file. And he reached out to the designer, and they provided an unlocked file. And a lot of it just comes down to asking for what you need. And every once in a while, you might just get it. You're going to get some people that are going to say, no, 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 this is my work. I can't send you something that's got my stamp on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that. I understand their concerns. But we're in 2024. This electronic stuff is the way to go.
Yeah. I mean, and it's been, that earlier PDF that I showed earlier is over 20 years old. This isn't anything new. And the rapid change that we're seeing in the industry, from CAD to BIM to 3D PDFs to AI, all the stuff is happening really rapidly, but we still never adjusted to those things from 20 plus years ago. It's going to be a world of hurt for some folks. But
even this CAD standard that you opened up, look over to the side there. It has bookmarks. Now, hopefully they're right, and they're not just dead marks there. But that somebody put the time into establishing those bookmarks or maybe it was auto-generated out of the software when it was printed to a PDF. But that's awesome. That's what we need.
Yeah, and this is from 2007, right? So again, it's adding bookmarks to PDFs is nothing new. It's just, oh, I didn't know it was there. And these are little things that you can do to make everybody's life easier.
At least it's not as long as the tax code.
I don't know, 978 pages is pretty ridiculous. But like there's hyperlinks in here that work really well too. So this is a good example. If you were to buy this, I think the current standard is like version 7. It's like $1,000. But if you know how to Google, you can find this one. Anywho, so yeah, PDFs, bookmarks, hyperlinks, layers, scale. And now obviously this isn't a design document, so there wouldn't be a scale. What other things would we want to think about when it comes to making sure this file is understandable by somebody who's going to open this in 25 years? Naming conventions, maybe? NCS, if you don't know what that is, I mean, that could be a problem. Do we like big, long words in our file names? Do we like abbreviations? Do we like spaces? Do we like dashes? Do we like periods or underscores? Where are you guys at with all that?
And some of that might be better answered by some of our more tech folks than myself. I'm a user, not a to know what pipes do versus what a dash does as far as searchability and stuff. I'm not very good at that. I'm still trying to understand why I can't just put spaces in file names and I need to put underscores in, because no one's ever really explained that to me. So.
Okay, so in Windows, you have a 256 character limit and on how long a file can be, and a space is actually registered as %20. So a space takes up 3 characters, not just 1. So there's one reason.
There you go. I learned something today, and I know Vince had some trouble with that with using cloud storage, where the file names were so long that they got up over that, I'm guessing over that 256 characters, and it would crash the system. He wasn't able to use those online file shares because the paths were so long. So okay, well there you go. I learned something that
I don't know.
I will start using underscores. So
yeah, I don't know if that's still the case. I know that was earlier in Windows, 95, 98, all that other stuff. But that's one reason. I always use underscores because I also have an Esri background for GIS, and GIS does not like dashes. So when I'm dealing with CAD files or anything else that I might open up in GIS, it doesn't like dashes. So I'm camel case and underscore. That's usually how I can tell it's a file that I had named, even though there's a space in here because I was lazy yesterday. But the reason I open up this one, because somebody mentioned that revs and dates are most important. So this is a construction set, that has the rev dates on here with the addendums. So pretty important stuff, I suppose.
Yeah, that's important. And the other one that this is going to be really probably nitpicky at this point. Don't move stuff around on the drawings from version to version or from revision to revision. I got a plan set last week that was Rev 15. We bid off of Rev 9. And I went through and was using a batch overlay. Worked great on some pages. And then I had some pages where instead of things lining up, one over the top, they were offset by about 1/2 inch. And it just takes that functionality of the overlay and you throw it out the window. Now I can go back and do that sheet individually and pick 3 points and such, but that slight movement, it's enough to make your eyes go crazy when you do that red and green overlay. The other one that they did is they would move a detail from one page to another page, or shift something around in a sequence. And the sequence looks completely different, but all they did was change 3 words and it changed a return and it pushed everything else out of whack. and it just makes that reviewing process take a lot longer. That's not so much a 25-year issue, but it's when you go from Rev 9 to Rev 15, it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. So
And Doug,
on
I
that
know what
note,
you mean there. So
yeah. Oh, I don't even know what DAX means, Doug, but all right. So let's talk about revisions. So this one has the revs put into the title block, stamp, however. But here in review in Studio, we do have revision history available to us in Studio projects. Is this something that you guys are using out there to review your different revisions? Or how are you keeping track of your old revisions, I should say?
So for myself in the civil space, I'm not using Studio at all. I see you folks use it, and I hear about other people using it, but our estimating department is 2 people, and we work on our own projects. We don't share, so we honestly don't get into it. Everything I do is we have saved copies, and it's Rev 9, Rev 10, Rev 15, separate PDFs. We're relatively low tech when it comes to that way.
Doug, I forgot that you had shared your XCon stuff. So look at that. So here's what we're talking about. You have the ability in Studio projects to go through and make changes, save it, and have those revision histories right here. So if you did need to go up and say, hey, what was done in 1 versus 3, you can go ahead and do that. And you can open it to see the difference. Now, we talked earlier about Autodesk Construction Cloud and how Tribal Business Center and some of these other new platforms are allowing for those reviews. The revision history in Autodesk Construction Cloud is amazing too, because you can actually compare, and it will overlay automatically revision 1 and revision 16 and show you the differences.
Yeah, and I do that, but again, it's a process. I go through and if I get a PDF that's 31 pages long, I split it all into individual sheets, and then I split the previous one into individual sheets, and I do use the batch tool to overlay them all, assuming they line up. That's actually another one I had on my list here was I like it both ways. I like it when I get a set of files where it's 31 individual PDFs. At the same time, I like it when I get one big file. Ideally, I'd like to have it both ways. I'd like to get when I get it from the cloud from my client, I'd love to have that 31-page PDF, and I'd love to have the individual sheets. It saves me that step. But having the pages named, the bookmarks set, and all that, and then the other thing that's nice about that is if you're talking with a client, you can say, hey, open up the bookmarks, go to the grading plan. It just helps with that processing for everybody.
Mm-hmm. So I had in there, Liz put her JavaScript stuff in the chat. So if you want to go check that out, there's your number, 010441739. So those revisions, well, let's go back to Doug's one right here. So when you have a file in Bluebeam Studio projects, you can right click and there's a revision history. So that's where you can go in and see, what's different between them. You can open up the old one. I was just answering a question in the chat. All right. So we got about 14 minutes left. We talked about layers. We talked about bookmarks. We talked about scale. We talked about links a little bit. What else do we need to think about?
Can I throw my number 1 out if I had my top 10 slide done? And I'm gonna go ahead and turn that into a LinkedIn post later on. So I invite everybody to come comment on that and let me know what you think. My number 1 complaint about PDFs that I get from people is when they're locked. A locked PDF, and there's ways of getting around it, it is just not a useful tool. And again, I understand people's concerns about protecting their information and protecting their stamp and all. And there's always going to be someone who's going to do something nefarious with something. And I hope I don't cross paths with those people.
Mm-hmm.
But to, again, put all that effort into building that digital document and then throwing it away or locking it down is very frustrating. I received some drawings from a particular designer. I'd rather, I don't have permission to show his stuff, so I'm not going to show it here today. He probably wouldn't be happy because he always makes sure things are locked and doesn't want them shared. Anytime I go in and try to set a scale on something, the whole screen goes blue. And I can't use that document to do my job, to do my takeoff, because I can't measure on it because he doesn't have the scale set. He doesn't have, and it doesn't allow me to set a scale and use it. Or if it does, it won't allow me to save it. And I can't save it as. It's just very frustrating. And T. Foster, I don't know your first name there, mentioned it's a viewport issue. Well, I can't remove the viewports and I can't work with it the way that they've provided it. So, and then the chat question just came up here: is locking a PDF different than flattening it?
What? Look at this. This is what Liz put in the chat. There's an unlock PDF website, smallpdf.com, unlock PDF. You didn't see this from me. Liz put that in the chat. Blame her. But wow. Okay.
Well, and yes, there's the network knows how to unlock PDFs. Certain things, it's kind of like Fight Club, certain things you just don't talk about. But anyway, so the question was asked here: is locking a PDF different than flattening it? And I would say yes. Flattening, depending on the level of the flattening you've done, you're still able to do things with it. You can unlock it, or you can unflatten it even typically. Locking a PDF really puts your handcuffs on you as far as being able to use any kind of markup tools and such, from my experience. Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we got a couple minutes here, let's go talk about flattening, right? So what that means is normally if we're doing stuff in review, now I'm just going to go to a different drawing because why not? I pulled this up last week. This one has markups in it, right? So if we're doing stuff in review, meaning we've added markups, we've added measurements, we've done things, that means that that's going to end up in our markups list, right? Meaning that if I send this file as is to somebody, they're going to be able to go in here and they're going to be able to manipulate my areas. They're going to be able to manipulate different things, assuming that they have review, because it depends on how it might look totally different in Nitro or Foxit or the A program, or if you're not opening us in review, it could look funky and it may or may not give you the ability to move things around. So we can tell that it's not flattened because everything's going to appear in the markups list. But if I come up to, oh boy, these Teams controls always being in my way is annoying. If I go over here to document and go to flatten or Control-Shift-M, it's going to give me all sorts of options. Do I want to flatten my image, my stamps, my snapshots, whatever? I can go over here and say, okay, what do I want? My rectangles, my notes. Do I want all my markups or just some? Do I want to allow unflattening? I do in this case. And I'm going to go ahead and hit flatten. Watch what happens to the markups list. It empties out. Now I can't manipulate that same area anymore. Now this file is not locked, but I flattened the markups to the PDF, right? So if someone can still get into that PDF and do things, but they can't manipulate what I did in review. So
it's almost like making a photocopy of it. You still see the markups, but you can't do anything with them.
Exactly. So I went and unflattened. Now I got my markups list back. and I have all my comments. So at this point, this file is not locked in any way. I do have that ability to go here to security, and this is where I can have different lockings and change permissions, and you can do things this way, or you can do it through whatchamacallit, the certification.
Yeah, the other one I found this can be helpful for is if, for example, if I'm doing an RFI
Hmm.
and I want to mark something up, but I still want to um, be able to modify it later. A lot of times I'll flatten the PDF before I send it out. I may even leave it so that even the person receiving it can unflatten it. But what I find is it helps keep my client or my client's engineers from moving my markups and losing that frame of reference.
Absolutely. Okay, let me get caught up on the chat. Small PDF is like $100 a year. Oh, I didn't get that far. Okay, cool. Yes, Jose, these are recorded. This is probably episode, I don't know, 155. Um, Michael, actually, yeah, this Saturday is the 3-year anniversary of Morning Coffee Review. So every Tuesday we've been doing episodes, and they're all on YouTube. So you can go find all the things. Pretty wild. So yeah, this one will be on YouTube in a day or two. So here in the chat, we're talking about the small PDF is $100 a year. If it saves you an hour or two, then you got great ROI, right? And that's sort of the theme of what we're talking about today. If you spend a half hour, an hour making sure that your PDFs are set up properly, you're going to save everybody down the line time too, right? And that's what we want to be able to do, is get in, do our work efficiently without having to hack it, without having to, use random websites or different tricks to unlock a file. We're in a stage where we need to work more collaboratively on our models. And, if it is a Revit thing, do it in 3D PDF. You can send a 3D PDF. You can do other things besides sending out that whole model stuff.
Yeah, and I think as we move to full paperless, if there is such a thing, there's going to have to be a trust factor.
Hmm.
And the the days of only working off of a paper copy that has an original ink stamp, uh, you know, I've been around long enough. I remember that,
Hmm.
um, and but at the same time, it's not practical. Now, contractually, is that locked PDF the contract document, and that's what you're going to have to build to? And at this point, that's what it is. Those are the documents. Um, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't share the information and work collaboratively and make it more efficient for everybody. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with the 30 plus folks that are on here today. We're all folks that are using the software and know its power. And I know I signed on to Civil Chat at one point, and the interaction with the meeting chat isn't quite as thorough as you guys are here. I really appreciate that with this. And we started getting into whether things should be locked down and such there. And some people are very passionate about protecting their information, and I appreciate that. I personally haven't been burned by it. And other people have, and they're probably scarred by that. But we need to get them some Bluebeam therapy.
Absolutely. So David mentioned Civil Chat. So next Tuesday, so the first Tuesday of every month, Brian Haley hosts a Civil Chat, which is very much like MCR, but it's all things civil. He's been doing it for years. Go find him on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever he's posting it. He usually joins us on MCR. I don't see him here today, but next Tuesday, I think it's at 12:30 Central, 11:30 Mountain. So check out Civil Chat. I know we've talked a lot of civil stuff today. If you're interested in learning more about AutoCAD and Revit and how things are working on the design side of things, it's a great way to learn more there. Sometimes he does talk Bluebeam as well, but MCR is all about a community. We got David Cutler joining us today. You've been joining MCR since the very beginning. We've had a lot of folks join us for years, and I certainly, on behalf of Michael and myself and everybody here at ATG, we want to thank you for joining us. Throughout the years, it's been pretty fun. But there's a lot of other communities, right? So in the chat, we're talking about Revit Radio with Brian Mackey. Brian Mackey is also part of Brian Haley's Civil Chat. So there are other community things. If you find things like Morning Copy Review valuable, there are other places you can go. We also mentioned U Chapter 2. Troy DeGroot has a U Chapter 2 great resource that you can go check out. Michael and I are going to be joining Troy for a presentation in a couple months. And all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah, and you mentioned U Chapter 2. I'm very active over there, and it's a great place to ask questions. There's a number of us that are liable to get back to you in a couple minutes, depending on how often we're checking things. I've learned a tremendous amount over the last 3 years from Jason and Michael here on MCR and everyone else in the chats and stuff like that. And then there's also the MCR group or MCR page on LinkedIn also is a great resource. So, get out, ask the questions, Google search, YouTube videos. It's amazing the content that people have shared and how supportive everyone is. And, at the end of the day, some of us are competitors, but at the same time, we all need to bring the industry up and help each other out. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's a good, valuable thing for sure. And Josh, this is all natural. I don't do anything with it. I just wake up like this. I wish. Anyway, let's see what else we want to talk about. I've just put the link in the chat to Morning Copy Review LinkedIn group. If you've got questions during the week or ideas, or hey, I want to be like David and I want to be a co-host, let us know. We're always happy to have folks on here. We've had a few of you already, and we're looking forward to doing more. As I mentioned, this weekend marks the 3 years that we've been doing MCR, and I can't speak for Michael, but I will. It's still on our calendar throughout the rest of the year. We don't have a plan to stop this. We're just going to keep doing our thing, and if we get bored, then we get bored. And in the meantime, we're here to be helpful and meet all of you and collaborate accordingly. So that said, thank you, David, for joining us today. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and your experience as an estimator. And we will be seeing you all next Tuesday when we're going to talk about, I don't know, it'll be a surprise. You'll hear about it on LinkedIn. All right, take care, everybody.
Thanks, Jason.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and check out some of the other content on our channel.